Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 1st noon Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board meeting. At this time, we will stand for the pledge and prayer. Mr. Bradley, would you like to do prayer after the pledge? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we come thanking you for this day, Lord. We thank you for your many wonderful blessings you bestowed upon us. We pray that you bless this meeting in a special manner. We pray that not any flesh be glorified. Lord, we thank you for the city that we live in, that you've made it possible for us to do the things that we do. We glorify and magnify you for all of that. We pray that you bless the leaders of this city. Continue to bless the ones that are on this board. Lord, help us to look to the hills which cometh all of our help. We want to glorify and magnify you for all that we do. Forgive us where we fail you. In Jesus' name we pray. We thank you, God. Amen. Amen. And amen.
And at this time, we will move to the consent agenda item, consider and take appropriate action on the minutes of the regular meeting of September 15th, 2020. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments about that. And if not, then I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes from September 15th, 2020.
Okay.
Second.
All right, and we have a motion and a second, and all in favor? And it passes. And then item to consider number 5, receiving presentation and overview of tax increment reinvestment zone, including background information on tiers number 1, central corridor, for the benefit of new board members. Mr. Spradlin.
So it has been a while since we met, and we've got a couple new board members, so I thought it might be beneficial to kind of remind everybody and go back over what the tiers is. And so you can see up on the screen over here, and just let me go ahead. Gonna be nice. So it's gonna be nice and nice. So this way you can see it from both areas, but that map is the outline. So what's colored is what is the tax increment reinvestment zone. And so tax increment financing is a way to direct funds to improve the zone. So the way that this works is that when we created the zone in 2018, we froze the appraised value of everything in that zone. So the taxing entities that participate still receive property tax on that base value, which is a little over $55 million. And then each year, as the increment goes up, the property taxes on that increase fund the tax increment funding, fund the zone, and go into our tax increment fund. And so the thinking is, or the strategy is that we then use that money to reinvest the zone, which increases the property value more than what it would have if we had not reinvested back into the zone. And at the end of the 30 years, all the taxing entities then get the benefit of the newer, higher increased tax value than what it would have been if you hadn't reinvested back into the zone. Now, as we'll see when we get to the annual report, we've generated about $12 million of increment in the zone since we first started. And so we're bringing in about $148,000 a year. As that money goes up, it's important to remember, so for the county and for the city, that increment comes out of our taxable value, which impacts the tax rate. So that amount is built into our tax rate. So it's important to realize that money is we're not losing any money on our operations, because if we didn't have the tiers, our no new revenue rate would be lower than what it is with the tiers. On the school district side, that goes into the state funding calculation, and the state actually makes up the difference for that tax increment. So really, for most of us, we didn't lose any taxes when we started, and all the future taxes go into that to allow us to fund certain improvements in the zone. And again, here's just another map of what that zone is. We did approve a project funding. This kind of shows you the breakdown of the different parcel types that are in the zone. And so our goal with this was to increase downtown redevelopment and increase housing. And if you didn't know, there is open houses today for the 2 new homes out on Camelot Street that are in the tiers that we finally got going. So if you want to swing by there after this from 11 to 2, you can go see the 2 homes that 712 has been working on for that. So we are starting to see, I know it's been a little bit, it's been, 8 years since this was started, and, it takes a little bit for it to build and for us to get resources to be able to do things. But we are starting to see some of the fruits of that. Normally, I like to remind people that, the comparison is the Amarillo downtown tiers does a lot of improvement. It took about 15 years before they started having some money and some availability to do things. So their tiers, you talk about some of the improvements in downtown Amarillo, but their tiers has been in place for, I think, 22 or 23 years now. So it has taken a little bit of time. We already have created the tiers, and we have some initial projects. And then, we projected out what we thought the increment was and that the value based on our annual increases. We planned that in the 30 years of the tiers, by the end of it, we would have generated a little over $12 million in increment revenue to invest back into the zone.
And then after the 30 years, it goes back to.
Right, then the tiers dissolve, we either all vote to extend the tiers, or the 10 tiers goes away, and now the taxing entities get the full benefit of the new value. So pretty much we've mainly been waiting. We did, do an infill housing program a couple years ago, and then the gentleman we were working with, COVID hit. Well, and last time we talked about we had a person that was interested in kind of the Borger Hotel at the time too, and COVID hit and changed all of that. And so now we're kind of getting our foot back. I will just say, with things that are coming, we did get a feasibility study done on the Borger Hotel, and it actually was a pretty favorable return. They indicated that, with the proper renovation, it likely could have about an 8 or 9% return on investment, which isn't necessarily quite high enough, but that doesn't leave much of a gap for us to fill up. So I think, we're still trying to work through that. And of course, on the agenda today is one of our bigger projects that we're working through with that. So that is just kind of a really quick overview of the tiers and what it is. Any questions?
And there's no motion.
There's no action on that one.
Okay, if not, then we'll move on to item 6. Consider and take appropriate action to receive the fiscal year 2025 tax increment reinvestment zone number 1 Central Corridor annual report. Mr. Spradlin.
The controls are backwards from when I operated up there for council meetings. So, each year we do an annual report. This is the first year that we've actually had a little bit of progress. So Nicole actually put this together. And for those of you that if you don't know, this is Nicole Chavez. She's our convention and Main Street coordinator. So she'll be taking a more active role with this board as it moves forward and as we start having programs and some funds to do anything. So we did kind of put this together. It's just kind of an overview of what happened in the tiers and what the tiers is. And so you can see the increment and the interest incomes over the years that we've had it. So right now, at the end of this year, our fund balance will be $486,113. So that's what we've accumulated to fund our projects over the last 6 years of the tiers. Last year's increment was $12,068,000. So you see our base value was just a little over $55 million, and last year that was at $67 million. I do expect a little more increment coming this year. Those 2 new homes that we talked about on Camelot Street are in the tiers. So the property tax off of those will help fund our other programs. Questions on the annual report? Kind of goes hand in hand with the last item.
If there's no questions or comments, then I'll entertain a motion. Unless y'all want to look over it a little bit longer. If not, then I'll just entertain a motion.
Move to approve the fiscal year 25 tax increment reinvestment zone annual report.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And then moving on to item 7, consider and take possible action on approval of the Main Street Momentum Grant Program and forward a recommendation to the City Council for final approval. Nicole.
You want me to take it?
Well, so Nicole, I gave her the charge, of this, and we've been talking through, as, if you haven't heard, Borger is a certified Texas Main Street city now. And so working with the Historical Commission and working on some of those, we've been trying to find ways, and the tiers, one of the goals was to reinvest in downtown. So we've been looking for a program and a grant that would help maybe kind of address some of that stuff. So Nicole has been engaging with our Main Street Project Board, and this has kind of come through multiple repetitions. She's received significant feedback from me as we've gotten through it. And so our goal with this is to create a program that could benefit, and I'll let her go into more details, benefit downtown buildings regardless of who the owner is. So, we're not necessarily looking at, in this program, funding any necessarily particular building, but making improvements that are some of the biggest impediments to expanding or utilizing downtown businesses, but tying them to businesses that are improvements that are permanent improvements to the building. So even if a business doesn't last or moves or whatever, the building is still improved and still better for someone else. So I'll let Nicole take over.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. Hello, everyone. And so we have been working on this for about a little over a year now, drafting this. We did a lot of feedback with the downtown merchants themselves, have been discussing boots on the ground kind of with property owners and just new entrepreneurs in the area to try to identify what their gaps are and what their struggles are. Why are we not seeing more businesses open? And so one of the things with downtown, as you all know, it's sat vacant for a pretty long time. We have 47% vacancy rate in our downtown zoning. And so what we're running into is a lot of people, they can't afford the high initial renovation costs that it takes to get back into these buildings and get them reactivated and ready for reuse. So that was something we kept hearing over and over, oh, I would love to go downtown, but, I can't afford to, put a $60,000 roof on and start my business and get into that building. So this is meant to address that. The EDC does have a lot of grants right now and programs that they utilize. But one of the things that we saw was the matching component or the reimbursement component. A lot of people didn't have the money up front to do that to the full amount to then wait to get reimbursed. So to alleviate that, this program kind of approaches it as a direct pay to vendor. So we would go through the application process with them. They would have to submit all the requirements. And then there is owner contribution. So they do have to contribute to their project. They're listed in your packet. We think it's, we don't want it to be outpriced anybody, but we still want them to contribute some. We want them to have some skin in the game. So those are listed out. What else? The main thing, like Garrett said, is to historic preservation of our, our downtown buildings, and then also getting them ready for reactivation. Do y'all have any questions, or is there any section of the grant that I can go into more?
You'll see that a lot of things that the big headaches that we hear are roofs, fire suppression, depending on the occupancy type, electrical upgrades, depending on the condition of the electrical upgrades, vent hoods, if someone's wanting to put in a food service business, and, ADA compliance, like bathroom type enhancements or even plumbing enhancements. And so that's generally what we've geared this towards, is to be able to fund some of those gaps that make the downtown built, those gaps that maybe aren't there in some other areas of town, but are there in downtown because of the age of those buildings. So we kind of want to make do with that. We're also kind of seeing that, in these engagements and talks, that a lot of the entrepreneurs, with that spirit and work ethic that want to do it, might not necessarily have the cash or might not necessarily be bank worthy, but that doesn't mean that their idea or their business wouldn't be good. And so we're trying to find ways to lower some of that cost. This program is built to possibly stack on top of other EDC programs or possible PACE funding. We are a a PACE program city, which gives us access to low-income loans for certain efficiency improvements, depending on what the project is. So we're really trying to build out, a menu of a whole lot of different things to address those impediments and find ways to make it more attractive and more stable. And I know you've got two members that have buildings downtown that can probably attest or talk to, the slightly different cost in maintaining a historical downtown building versus a non-downtown building, but that's the goal.
And I will say, this is just one tool that we are using. We have partnered with the Chamber and the EDC, Deidre's on that as well, to do business boot camp. So we have reached out and gotten 5 business owners that we are going to sit with them 1 day a month for 8 months. We go in depth into, business basics, like what you would find at your associate's business level type college class. So we're addressing kind of the education gap and maybe skills training on that end. This will address, the buildings. And so I think with all of it working together, we'll start to see some movement.
And there is some education tied to this grant. If we're going to give you money, we want you to go meet, if Leading Edge is over at the EDC once a week to give business counseling and business financial help. So we're wanting people to go get that. We want to set people as much up as possible for success. And so this is a good way, it might be, if it's your own money, I can understand that you might not find the time, but if we're going to give you money, we're going to want you to go over there and get that education and do some of that stuff.
Also the Google.
Yeah, making sure that their social media presence is there, that people can find them when they, the older I get, the more I find myself not necessarily liking change. For someone that's kind of always been a change agent, I'm slowly realizing that I'm getting older. But, I remember, back in the day when people would come through City Hall every time we got those new maps in, because everybody wanted the new maps that showed where everything is. Now nobody comes in, very few people come in and ask for a map, because everybody looks on their phone. And if you haven't filled out the right stuff, people don't know where your business is. And so those are things that they might not think of, but that's really important for people that even if they're just, especially in Borger, I don't think people understand how many people just drive through here or are visiting for just a little bit of time, and they will just Google search, where can I eat? Where can I get this? Where can I get that? And so having that social media presence is really important. I think the things that might be open for discussion right now. So the way that this program is written is that a request under $10,000 can be approved by staff depending on funding. Projects between $10,000 and $50,000 would then have to come to this board for approval. And projects over $50,000 would have to go to this board and then the city council for approval.
What kind of projects would be that staff would approve under $10,000? I mean, does it have to be?
It still has to meet those criteria. So it'd have to go through the criteria and the budget that we establish annually through this board and the council, there'd have to be money for it. But I'm thinking
Like a roof repair.
a roof repair is one of the projects. So if it's not a roof replacement, if it's a lower roof repair, maybe it's heating and air, a heating and air unit needs replaced, and that might be under $10,000, but we're looking, we will still confirm, is it a vacant building, is it an open building, who owns it and how we're getting all of that, but.
And this is available for not necessarily just building owners, because the building owners, of course, but if a business was going into a building and they wanted to update that building so that they're just a business owner as well.
They would just have to get something signed off from the building owner.
The form lists that, there's a space for the building owner and the tenant if that's how it's structured.
And this is kind of some more information on how we're scoring system. So there will be a defined scoring system. So it's not going to be just, we feel like this project will be good. We'll have actually some rubric and guidelines. The first one, we'll rate everything from a 0 to a 5. The first one is business sustainability. So applicant demonstrates a viable business plan, proof of insurance, and financial readiness. Community benefit. Project fills a service gap, provides consistent business hours, creates jobs, foot traffic. Dining and entertainment businesses receive higher consideration. Because I think one thing we've identified with the Borger Main Street project in our transformation strategies is to recruit nighttime dining and entertainment downtown. So this program is for the whole downtown area zoning. So that's 3rd to 10th, and then the backside of Weatherly to Deal. But if you're in the Texas Main Street program area, which is from 3rd to 9th, just on Main Street, so we're kind of making that our core of where we're going to start focusing our initiatives. If you're in that area, you get a higher consideration. And then, like he said, if it's a vacant building that's going to be reactivated, you get higher points for that. And then also if you're the historic preservation impact. So those are kind of the things that we're going to be considering when we do get applications.
And the $10,000 threshold, that was mainly, I wasn't for sure if the board would want to approve every single project and us have to try to get the board to meet, especially for little projects. That's why that number was thrown in there. I'm perfectly fine if the board wants to approve all the projects because you want to see them. That's fine. I just kind of, that's why I said that to me is the discussion point for this board is, are you happy with the project types that can be funded? Are you happy with the scoring criteria? And are you happy with the approval thresholds?
How many buildings down Main Street do the Evans estate still own?
So the Evans actually, a lot of their property has been sold, so they hardly own anything downtown. One of the main ones that they had was, we just researched it, what was it? The American Legion building, right? Yeah, the Evans owned that, they sold it to the Gambrell family, and then they had it, a lot of the Gambrells had a lot of buildings downtown for a long time. But fortunately, when Katie was at the EDC, she worked really hard to get those properties changed over. So we actually don't have that many out-of-town owners. Unfortunately, a lot of the problem buildings we have are citizens that own them.
Yeah, I know that the out-of-state ownership persists in perception, but in the last 20 years, that's changed drastically. And Katie, I will give Katie with that because Louise actually loved Katie. And it was hard for, I think, Louise to like anybody, so I give her definitely some bonus points there. But in some of hers, like, I don't know if people realize, but the old JCPenney building, she had signed a long-term lease agreement with JCPenney's like 2 years before they closed. So she was making more money because they still had to pay her even after they closed. So she was making money from JCPenney's for like 20 years after that closed. So she was actually incentivized not, because if she ever re-leased it, JCPenney's would stop paying her. And so that's, I think, and that's why once their lease ended is when Katie started making a little more inroads with her, because now the building actually wasn't making money, it was actually being a financial loss. But that was one of the big holdups with the old.
Yeah, it was a 30-year lease is what it was.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things with the Borger Main Street project that we're also working on, now that we're in the Historical Commission's program, we have access to downtowntx.org, which is a really cool website that they host. It's only for Texas Main Street cities, and it's pretty much like a Facebook marketplace for historic downtown buildings and investors. So it's a way for investors or people who are looking to purchase historic property, because with renovating a historic property, there comes a lot of tax credits as well. So that's also a funding mechanism that we can use. But in doing that, we have to have an extensive building inventory list, which I can provide to you guys the next time we meet. So we're tracking who owns the buildings and the properties now, what square footage are they, we're going to get appraisal value on them. So we will have a pretty extensive list, and we're already started. I mean, we're almost done with it, but a pretty extensive list of what we actually have in our downtown building stock.
I know it's been a while since we've met, but there has been a lot of work going on with staff behind the scenes trying to get us back to, I didn't really want to call a meeting, get everybody up here just to approve minutes and tell you, we're still working.
Just the Main Street, the work that Nicole's had to put into that, and I mean, it is really going to do some benefits for.
Yeah, the data they force us to keep is very useful, and I mean, there's a reason that they force us to do it, and it's stuff that developers or building investors are going to want. It's stuff that the community can benefit from knowing. But that also, we do have access to some of their architectural support and stuff. So sometimes if any of those buildings need some architectural review or architectural plans, we can maybe reduce some of that cost by looping in the historical commission's team. And, we have left it in there so that I know that, my history with, I've been here long enough to know that back when I was very first on the council, there was a little push for certified local government. And certified local government includes downtown design standards. And that was a big pushback because people, I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding, but I get it. They didn't want the city telling them what color and what materials and stuff like they can use. Of course, it was funny because it was like about a year after that the tattoo shop went in downtown and they started painting it purple, and all those people that didn't want downtown design standards were now bitching that we were letting them paint it purple. I'm like, but that's the way that we're approaching this, and the way that I think is more acceptable is, we're going to control some of that through the grant. So, if we're going to give you taxpayer money, we want some feedback on what it's going to look like. If you don't, you can still do whatever, if you're using your money, do whatever you want. But if you're using our money, we want to approve it and want a little bit of feedback so that it can maintain the historical standards and stuff like that. Now, this is not us being, like a certified historical building where we're going to send your plans off to the historical commission and they got to be a historical commission. We're talking about, okay, what material are you going to use? What color are you going to use? Is it going to, a little bit of that? But I think it's a lot easier for the investors and even the landowner, the property owners. They're more willing, I think, to do that, knowing that we're putting money into it than if we're telling them what to do with their own money.
It's
So-
not going to have to go before the Historical Society to get approval on any of the facade stuff.
Nope. Right now, as we've been in a certified Main Street city since January, but I have been working kind of behind the scenes with them for the past 4 years. And so one of the things which we thought was really cool, we got our notice that we were accepted, and then literally 2 weeks later, they already had their architect and design team down here. They toured almost, 6 different buildings with us, crawled in and out of them, and they're actually going to help us do a rendering of the 500 block and do kind of a rendering update of the Newman and Bailey building and the Cezanne's building and Clesta's building, and try to see and give us tools in a photo and an image that we can show people to imagine the possibilities of what historic preservation looks like down here.
Unless they seek funding privately, they don't have to have the historical commission standards necessarily, unless they're trying to get tax credits, I believe.
Yeah, that's usually the only time, or unless you've you have the Statue of Liberty and they don't, something like that.
And they have thrown out, and I'm not, what maybe at some point will come to the community is whether or not we want a historic district. And so if we create historic districts, because we don't really, based on our conversation with the Historical Commission, I don't think there's really any set building, single building that reaches the threshold of national historic significance. But our downtown district could, just with Boomtown and Aceborg and all of that stuff. A district opens up some more grant opportunities and some more tax opportunities, but then it does come with some more of the historical review. So generally, our belief right now is we need to get Main Street a lot farther down the road before we consider that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we might not want to look deeper into that and engage the community at a later point, but right now we're more concerned with getting roofs fixed so the buildings stop deteriorating and getting businesses in them. And making sure that they just don't, we don't want a bright pink building. We don't want them to
We
use,
don't want purple buildings.
city money to make it bright pink and, make it completely out of character. But I think some of what we're learned, when that stucco fell down on the side of the old bank/jewelry store or whatever over here, I don't think any of us would have realized what was underneath that crumbling stucco looked a whole lot better than the crumbling stucco. And so I think, we're sometimes forgetting what.
A perfect example is on the Newman & Co. building. If you look at the bottom, how she has still the stamped tile in front of there. Well, if you look at the bottom row, it's kind of like a torn carpet. And if you peel back that carpet, it still has all the original glass tiling in there. So, a lot of these buildings, because they've sat vacant so long, it's like a time capsule. I mean, there is so much of the original stuff still in these buildings that can be adaptive reuse, like, and breathe new life into it, but still preserve it and preserve that historic character. Because I mean, heritage tourism is a huge economic driver. I mean, we have a lot of what we call industrial tourism here. But with this designation with the Main Street City and really pushing our historic heritage and like it being our centennial year, that's something that we can really promote for tourism as well.
If the Tiers board decided to take what was in here for this year, $407,000, and make from like 4th Street down to 7th Street uniform, let's say with an EFS front on it. If the building is occupied, they would have the opportunity to come in through the EDC and get the facade grant. I'm assuming that's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Tiers money goes, I mean, if you make it uniform, pretty, people are going to be a little more interested than spending all my money on this building and have a piece of shit next door.
Yeah, and like even the historical commission, they talked about storefronts, new storefronts and windows.
That's what I'm talking about.
And a lot of times it's like they said, it's cheaper if you do like a whole block all at once instead of one store at a time. So coming in with the program and trying to get everybody on board with letting us replace all their storefront glass, because it might be $6,000 per building if you do it individually, but if you do it all together, it could be $4,000 per building. And
On the EFS, that's the way it is. The more you do, the cheaper it gets.
yeah.
And that's our goal, is to have big, like kind of start showing visible wins. I think all of our wins up to date have been kind of behind the scenes and like a lot of like boring paperwork kind of stuff. But I think it's all because now we're going to start ready to seeing those visible changes in the facades and really breathing new life into it.
And a lot of that happened, like when the EDC did the fronts of these three buildings right here at 6th and Main, that we're freshening it up and looked at it. And even like in the historical commission, I think they had a good point, and we've talked, and I know that we've talked a lot about like realignment of Main Street, but that's never, I think there's some misconceptions out there that we've already committed to realignment and by God, it's going to happen. That's not the case. What we know is that, and I think it's hard for some people to remember, when the Serpentine went in, that was 1969. That's been 60 years ago now, a little more than 60 years ago. So when we're looking at Main Street, we have infrastructure failures that are going to have to be fixed. And so when we talk about that, it's like, when we do that, what do we want it to look like? But at the same time, like the historical commission their valid point was like, well, you can redo the streets and the sidewalks all you want, but if the building behind it's still crappy, it's still a crappy building.
Yeah.
And so, that was somewhat of a valid point. You could spend $4 million on the streets, but that $4 million could also probably renovate almost all of the buildings. And now, I mean, there's still some maintenance that we have to do, but, and there are like we have applied for the next, as a certified Main Street city, we get a set-aside downtown revitalization grant program through TDA. So we are no longer competing with all the non-entitlement cities in the state. We're competing against only the certified Main Street non-entitlement cities, which is about 40. So that grant this year is $1 million. If it's awarded, that's likely enough to, if we don't realign and we just like replace sidewalks and the planters, get rid of the crumbling brick and, put pedestrian lighting and do all of that, we can probably do 2 blocks with that grant. And so after talking, I think with the historical commission, I think we're kind of more of that mindset of let's use grant money to focus on infrastructure and then use Tiers money and EDC money to work on buildings and businesses. And then that way we get the better use, because the downtown grant money we can't use, like we can't give that to businesses. It's got to be, infrastructure. So I think that's a recurring set of money that comes up. Will we get that grant every single year? Probably not. But is there a likelihood, as long as we maintain our downtown certification, that we get that grant every 3 to 5 years? I think so. And so if we can do 2 blocks at a time, and we get it this year, that means within 5 years, we'd have most of Main Street, at least sidewalks and pedestrian lighting, enhanced. And that grant right now, it's $1 million on us, or on the state, $50,000 on us. So that's a pretty good deal. So we haven't really planned on using much of the tiers money, even though it could be used for infrastructure. We've generally been thinking, and we need businesses and foot traffic and people to see the benefit before we start.
When you go to those Main Street workshops, most of what they push is the sidewalks and the pedestrian walking areas. It's very important. As well as the buildings. But
Well, and even with our downtown plan, what they latched onto, and I do really like this, is the theme of our downtown plan is dragging Main. Because that was one thing that always came up. But when they talk about dragging Main, they're not talking about like in the car now. What the plan encourages us to do is to create multiple things for people to do so that you get out and you walk up and down. Parking becomes less of an issue if you're going to be there for a period of time and visit multiple places. Parking is an issue when you're in a hurry because you're going down there for one business, you want to get out in front, you want to walk in, and you want to walk right back out and leave. And so that's what they encourage to do, is to make placemaking and stores and events so that you you elongate people's needs. And so if you need to stop at some place in the 400 block and in the 500 block and in the 600 block, you're going to probably, depending on your health status, you're probably just going to walk it because it's going to take too much time to, park in the 400 block, get out to your business, get back in the car, drive to the 500 block, park, get out to your business, get back in, then drive to the 600 block. And so when you look at it that way, it's not as big of a deal. And I always do like to, when we started doing some of this stuff, I did the little map of the distance from the middle of the Walmart parking lot to the back milk counter is a block and a half of downtown. So you say you don't want to park behind and walk out front, but if you go into Walmart to get milk, you've already walked farther than that.
And we have now 2 pass-through parks. So we have a pass-through park, Wanda Cost, connecting the really nice, large new parking lots in the back in the 500 block, and now we have one on the 400 block as well.
and Craig and Nicole, but didn't the historical commission say that it would be better to leave the
Oh yeah, they told us, they were like, people are paying millions and millions of dollars to get their downtown to try to have the character and aesthetic and the slow traffic of what you guys have now. They were like, this is amazing. Like, it's funny because a lot of the times we're our own worst critic and we're the ones that kind of look at our stuff, with our nose up. But then when we have all these outsiders come in, they're like, no, y'all have so many assets. And I think it's just trying to switch the perception and just like kind of educate on the science-backed things of this, because the Historical Commission's program is science-backed.
If it stays, we just have to invest in good street stripe where people know how to drive and not play chicken with each other. People don't know how to drive through that.
Is that really the striping or is that education? Well, and some of it, like realignment, is probably $1 million a street, a block. Renovation, like, adding the lights and replacing the sidewalks, refacing the planter boxes, is probably $500,000 a block.
And the amount of years that we'd have to be shut down to have people come in the building.
Yes.
On 10th Street, that happened.
To be honest, I think this community is equally divided on whether it should be straight or whether it should stay the same. And there are people that are just as passionate on both sides. There are some that, by God, you need parking, and don't take our trees, that won't be as good. And it's I think it's very divided. I get feedback.
It's a hot topic
On both sides, but I think really, just like I said, from a cost perspective,
we'll get more bang for our buck if we leave it.
because just like we've kind of set the standard up in the 700 block. So when we got that grant and we added the pedestrian lightings in front of Jalisco's on the opposite side of the Morley, those are the standards. So like if we did those down Main Street, the goal would be the street lights would be like what's on 10th Street, but in between the main street lights would be closer proximity of the pedestrian lights, kind of like what you have in downtown Amarillo. And I never used to think Main Street was all that dark until we put in those lights, and you see how much better that one block is than the rest of it. But we can do, like I said, we can do all of that for probably half of what it would if we ripped everything out, realigned the street, and redid everything. Because mostly what we've got is we've got some drainage issues where the trees have grown through the drainage pass-throughs. A little bit of accessibility issues, the corner intersections definitely need to be reworked with the ramps and some of that stuff. We need to re-pour all the sidewalks. We probably need to resurface the street. Of course, this summer we're going to micro-surface Main Street, which is like we did on Roosevelt and West Wilson, which is done really well. So that'll at least give it a nice
Fresh look.
And that'll buy us some time while we see what the grant does and what we can do with the grant. But that just, like I said, I think with using grants for that, using tiers money to help, physical things for the building, and then letting EDC incentivize business, we really can put multiple things together to make it a lot more attractive.
You're gonna take another 8 years to do all this?
I hope not. I think we're really close to the city council. We've already discussed we're going to redo the 6th and Main intersection. Since we're resurfacing everything, we're going to do a concrete decorative intersection there with kind of to help mark the centennial and stuff like that. So we'll get that done. And so we're really mindful of wanting to see some small wins. I think what we figured out that in everything we do, being able to point to continuous improvement. I think that some cities, they don't do anything for 5 years and then they do something really big. And I think it's almost better doing a bunch of little things over that 5 years to where people see constant improvement, because we've had a lot more feedback from that, where we do something in at least a park every year, where we do something with at least several streets every year. And so we're getting a lot more feedback as they see that. And that, I think, is where this grant kind of comes, because we're going to be able to have some pretty big, I guess, is objective, but I think we're gonna have a lot of interest, and I think it's gonna remove a lot of barriers. And even for existing businesses, I think it's gonna help them stay. Like, I know Clesta, is having roof issues right now to the point to where she's having to think about moving somewhere else. I mean, you've had.
You could attest to that, Brandy.
And so we've got a lot of good, unique businesses downtown, and businesses need unique businesses. And what we've seen in this community really as a whole is if you've got a unique, well-supported, consistent business, they do well. And it's just, we've got that gap between either nationally advertised commercial rental that's super expensive. Downtown prices can be cheaper, but that's because the buildings need lots of work.
And I think the contact that Nicole and Deidre have had with the businesses, just tons and tons that I think it'll go pretty quickly. With
And
the
some of-
tiers, they will start using it. Because for one thing, they don't have to pay that. They don't have to put that money up in front. And that for some small businesses,
It's huge.
And we have,
almost impossible.
and you'll notice the matching amounts are very small.
Yeah, they are.
We didn't, this is, a lot of the EDCs match, because they're looking to make a successful business, they want like a 30 to 50% match, which is not uncommon in EDCs. This is not an EDC, and we were a little less concerned about the match because all of these improvements improve the physical building. So it's not like we're investing in equipment that if the business goes under, that equipment's not going to be able to be used by anybody else. We're actually improving a downtown building that we want to preserve and keep useful going forward. So if we, help with whatever, a roof or electrical or new windows and doors, efficiencies, that all benefits that building for the long term. So we didn't need necessarily a big match, but at the same time,
We need some skin in the
we
game.
didn't want it to be free money.
And some of the things that we have identified in our Borger Main Street project transformation strategies is things that we think will show kind of like visible wins. We want to work and get signage downtown that's all consistent. I don't know if you've ever seen the wrought iron signage in front of the EDC that they have, like something like that every business gets their own unique branded sign, A-frame signage. And then another one was like bistro tables downtown, where you can start like creating like little outdoor seating pocket areas, or maybe in the pocket park. So those are things that we're kind of, as far as design wise, that is more visible. Those are kind of things we're starting to work on this year, just in that area.
And I think with the grant with that, what you will see is if we get that grant to do improve, you're going to like the evergreen planters, the big round ones, those probably go away. so we can have more flexible sidewalk space. Because that's where you could have seating or have pop-up booths or do more things to where right now you've got a lot of sidewalk there, but most of it's unusable because it's big round planters. Now, I think we keep the intersections and the big bulk trees and all of that stuff, but that is generally I think that's why our serpentine is a little less effective, because the benefit of the serpentine pattern is you do get bigger sidewalks in certain areas, but we then filled them full of concrete planters, so you can't use the sidewalk for anything other than the evergreen tree. And so that really, and we're likely to take out a lot of the low walls, or the point of those is to force you to go to the crosswalks to cross the street, but they also take up usable sidewalk space. And so there's going to be some changes in that, which would then allow more flexibility, because then because in a serpentine pattern, the stores that don't have storefront parking are supposed to benefit from the extra sidewalk.
Yeah.
But in most of our blocks, the extra sidewalk isn't really there. So.
And Nicole, can you tell them a little bit about the ideas for a couple of vacant buildings right now that y'all, if they were updated?
Yeah. One of the ones that we are really interested in is the Cezanne's building that the EDC owns. We are actually, next board meeting that they have, we're going to pitch an idea of a maker space where they can renovate it to where there's, your individual booths for businesses. There's already a pre-established shelving. There's maybe like a shared shipping station in the back so that they can go online and start, experiencing e-commerce. And so that was one vision we had for that. The next one would be like a food hall. So we noticed that a lot of people that open a business are closing within the year. Unfortunately, we see that. And we need restaurants, right? So we feel like the solution to that is if we could have some type of food hall style incubator spaces, that you had maybe like 3 commercial kitchens that you could get your new businesses in. They could start, seeing how it is to work in a commercial kitchen, get foot traffic, experiment with the recipes. And then you have open seating, maybe a bar area or, some games or anything like that. But it becomes a gathering area naturally, but also an incubator space for those restaurants. So instead of waiting for restaurants to come here, we're building up our restaurant and business owners that we have here.
And then they would move into maybe a vacant.
And then the goal would be to keep them there maybe 6 months, 6 to 8 months, and then they would be ready to move into another vacant building.
We're trying to create all those steps so that, like I said, we can take someone that's got that work ethic and that will do well, but maybe doesn't have the credit or doesn't have the cash yet. So we let them help build their financials smallly and then grow them to the next step, and then eventually get them to where they do have the financials to invest even more. The maker space, we have a lot of home businesses that sell a lot of great products that I think could grow, but they can't grow in home. They've maxed out what they can do at home, but they're not yet big enough to go buy their own space. And so that's where the maker space comes in, because, shipping, the area to box and weigh and label things, that takes up a lot of space, but that's something that can be easily shared, that we can put in without a whole lot of cost, but saves that person.
And then they can share utilities. So they get that, kind of get used to, okay, I got bills coming every month if I'm going to be in a building. So really, I call it the downtown entrepreneur growth pathway. So that's kind of what our goal and mission is with that. And this is just a tool of how we can help get these businesses there.
This tool's kind of in the middle.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools.
So we've got like incubator spaces and stuff, trying to get those built out to get them there. And then this can help close that gap, either keeping a business in the building or helping one of these growing businesses get the building ready to move into out of the incubator space. And then the EDC can have programs to help them grow employees and more like that. And so that's what we talk about, trying to come up with this path.
Yeah, I think that path that y'all have done, you and Deidre and Garrett have just really filled in those gaps filling in the gaps between the EDC, what they can handle, and I think it's going to be in the.
And that was a lot of the goal of this tiers. It was, it's kind of hard to pitch it as an idea back when there's no money and we're trying to this is what we think it'll do. Now we're finally to the point to where it's grown and we've got some finances coming in that I think we're about to really see what it can do and start having tangible progress, and I think that'll be exciting.
And like what Jeff, I think, saying do it all and do all the buildings, but there's so many, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but that are being used for storage and, and I mean, honestly, until they understand that that is not helping downtown, then putting money into their building is, to me, would just not be, I wouldn't want
And
it.
that's something we're hoping to address, but we feel like in order to do that, we need to give people tools in order to help them fix those buildings. So that we can empower them to be like, hey, you have a great building, even if you're not wanting to sell it, because I mean, obviously keep your property if that's what you want, but let's get it fixed up so you can rent it out. Let's have a storefront downstairs, or let's brainstorm and get with Park Hill and see how we can make your upstairs condo apartments that you can rent out for,
You just
whatever a
do the
month.
facade all the way down through there, make it more uniform,
Yeah.
regardless of what they're doing on the
Well,
inside.
yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Well, I think once, if the grant gets approved and stuff like that, when we start seeing what people's needs are, that's like if we've got two people that wanted new storefront, that's when maybe, okay, we've got two that want new storefronts. Let's go talk to the others and see if they are willing to replace their storefront too. Or, I really think, I think it's going to be very helpful to the businesses, but I think our biggest upfront needs for this are going to be roofs. And that's preventing businesses from having insurance, and and even more so even if we improve the facade, if the roof is leaking in, we've got to.
Well, usually too, one issue, one building with one roof issue ends up being 3 buildings with 3 roof issues because of how all the roof lines are. Something too, I mean, with all the centennial stuff and the historic component of it, we're not going to get these buildings back. I don't know a single one that's still standing here that wasn't at least built at, in the 20s, in 1926. I mean, a lot of them were rebuilt and or added onto or modified, but we're not going to get that component back. So that's something, I mean, really we have to consider. I mean, I know y'all talked about the historical significance of everything, but we're not going to get that back. We can't pick up these buildings and move them towards Walmart where a lot of newer, businesses are being built. We can't transplant them. This is the historic part of our city that we have to kind of pay homage to and protect.
I agree.
I think you guys are on track with what you're doing, man. I'm impressed, especially the way you're formatting it to beautify the city versus the building. You know what I mean? That makes a lot of sense. Because one person hit the road and then you put that money in that building, it's done, where you utilize that. Very impressive to me. I like that.
And Main Street definitely utilizes and talks about, like you said, the district. So we have a very historic district. And I think when you have that and you can create like business to business, cool walking tours at that point, or you can, get little QR codes on the buildings that you scan and it tells all the history of it. I mean, like Deidre said, just going through all this stuff for the Centennial, we have some amazing history, like craziness, like interest, like all kinds. So it's really cool that we could be able to tell that.
Are you getting this information out to?
Yeah, Deidre posts it all the time, every Throwback Thursday, and
We're doing and some of it is highlighted. We're doing a historical section in our Boomtown Beat, which gets put into the water bills quarterly now. Since it's our centennial, there's a little bit of that. So, it is, communication is always hard because everybody communicates in a lot of different things. If you're on social media, we communicate pretty well. The Boomtown Beat, goes in the water bills. It seems like every quarter I get a call from at least one older lady that's, we really like that. I hope you don't stop doing it. So, I mean, I know that we print 5,900 of those, knowing that probably 5,800 of them are thrown away, but the money for the 100 that do read it is probably worth it. We put stuff we have a long-term contract with the billboard out by Subway. So, I mean, we're trying to do some of that stuff, but communication is one of the hardest things because, there's 2 sides to that, right? You have to communicate it and it has to be received. And to be received, they have to be willing to receive it. And, we had a gentleman come to the council here a couple months back, I think last year, talking about code enforcement. It's like, it'd be really nice, if y'all put a flyer in the water bill about code enforcement and all the programs and how to do that. And I'm like, it's like, you're right. That's why we did it last month. So, it was even his idea, but he didn't notice it in his own water bill. And so, communicating things is all we do everything. I mean, visit Borger.com. There's the Borger, Texas app now. We put Boomtown Beat in the water bill. We use the billboard out by Subway. We put things on the wind. I mean, everything goes out in about 7 ways. But even I, being from the city, I get frustrated at some of that stuff. And then it wasn't here too long ago. I tried to open a door and the door wouldn't open. I was like, what the? And then I read the sign that said use other door.
That's me every time.
And I was like, well, it's like, I guess I can't complain too much about everybody else. I did the same thing, so many of us just get in our routine, and I don't know, I was driving around too. When I drive around, I was looking for something, and so I was actually looking, and I drove by something. I was like, I come to City Hall, I drive down Weatherly every day, but when I was driving looking for something, I was like, when did that get? Like, oh, that's been there for like 3 months. I was like, and I haven't noticed it for the last 3 months. You just get, so dealing with people can be hard, but I think we're doing a pretty good, as good a job as we can, doing that stuff. And with some of our centennial outreaches and things like that, we'll have more opportunities to educate people on some of that. But downtown is definitely, and I think, I think it's important to realize that, the city over 100 years has made lots of investments in downtown over the years. And I think because of that, as bad as you think downtown might be, our downtown is still a lot better than a lot of other communities our size. There is still activity down here, still maintained enough that we can have community events down here. You're still not afraid to have the parade routes go down here. Yes, it can have a long ways to go, but investing in the Serpentine in the 60s, investing in different things over the years has kept it in much better shape than many other cities of similar size throughout the state. So I don't necessarily want to be all doom and gloom. And we've done things, we've got more things coming, and I think, it's only going to get better from here.
It's really cool. We have about 10 to 14 people regularly that come to our Borger Main Street project meetings every month. My email thread that I send out, I have over 70 people on that email chain that I do a monthly update to. So we really try. I think people are our greatest asset, and so really trying to that's one of our main goals, is to interact with the people, especially engage with the business owners and engage with the property owners down here and say, like, how can we help you?
And with that, and what I like to say all the time too, is everything we do needs to be a partnership with the community. The community can't expect us to do everything, and we can't expect the community to do everything. It takes both of us, and how do we come up with these programs and funding streams to where we can be a partnership, and whether that's the bulk self-help refuge trailers to where you put the trash in it, we'll haul it off, but I can't, put the trash in it, or the lawn care kits trying to get, okay, you don't have a weed eater, we'll let you borrow ours, or whether it's grants like this or things like that. So we're definitely, everything we try to do tries to have that partnership component to it. And we want to engage and empower our residents and our businesses and our citizens because, it is a partnership.
So my question, sorry y'all, I have a sinus infection, but my question is, if it's over 10,000, we'll vote on it as a board. If it's under 10, whose call is that? Is that Nicole's call, or are y'all talking about that together?
It would likely be, it would end up, she would review it and rank it. And then we've taught, right now, everything goes through the Main Street Committee too, just as like a non-official, just kind of.
Yeah, to touch base with them. Our Borger Main Street Committee has been involved every step of the way through this for the past year. So they really have it's really shocking to me, but we really do have a really core group of people that are invested in downtown, and they're on board. They're ready to go. We just got to help them and get them the tools so that they can get there.
Right now, the way the city administration is set up, I would have to sign off on everything. I'm not going to be the one scoring it. They're going to bring a recommendation to me, and then I'm going to likely say yes or no. And like I said, I don't even know how many less than 10,000 we'll get. Like I said, it was just when we're building out these projects, I don't necessarily want, boards can provide a lot of good feedback, but I think it's better for y'all to engage, to set certain criteria so that we don't have to have y'all here every week. But there are things when it's enough money that we don't want to take on that responsibility. The representatives of the community need to make that decision and not us. And so, like I said,
Scoring system, they have to meet a certain, like, eight, before they'd even just consider.
Yeah, there's a minimum score, qualifying score. Yeah, minimum of 18 points. I'm just curious, I'm really curious if this goes through just to see like what we get as far as applications. Cause like Garrett said, I think once we have an idea of what even people, have the money to, put their part into, so we'll know how many people are kind of investment ready to move forward with these projects, but also what their projects are. And then at that point, I think we do exactly like you're saying and okay, we got these many roofs, let's get 6 of them done, boom, and we have that, so.
because it's based on things that we have heard and what we believe are the problems based on projects that have come and tried to get permitted, or they've gone to the EDC, or existing businesses that are struggling fixing things. So we feel like it's based on pretty sound needs, but like anything, until it's out there and people come to you. Kind of like the bulk waste trailer, first year you had like get used once every 3 weeks, and now they're booked up every weekend for like 3 months.
And weekdays.
Yeah.
But last year, that program, took, it was like, I think it was,
Yeah, that cleaned up some neighborhoods.
well, it was several hundred tons that was disposed of through that program that likely would have been illegally dumped or handled somewhere else. And everything we do, now, I know that those that work for the city or the city council, we have performance measures and we track all that stuff so that we can see how things are performing, that we will start logging all of this, and you'll be getting statistics on, how many people applied for roofs, how many people applied for this, and I'm sure that there's going to be, we don't want to just throw money out there to throw money out there, which is why we do score it, because
There's viable projects and obviously not viable projects, for sure.
So as far as this committee, will meet as needed.
unless you want to change that threshold, or,
I like that. So I don't like to meet just to be,
yeah.
What were you gonna say, Chris?
I have enough of it.
I was gonna say, I don't know, since, the majority of the group is not city, it's county and school board as well. I don't know, I like to be accountable for those decisions to the taxing groups. And because if there's 20 to 30 projects, and not that I don't trust you guys, because y'all are doing a great job, if there's 20, 30 projects, that's half the money gone.
Right.
And so, if this is gonna be a board that we're responsible for that direction, what the money's gonna do, I think we need to have the skin in the game, that if we say we meet once a quarter and we decide what to do on like emergency roof repair or something like that. But if we're gonna decide the future of this district as the tiers group, I think we're gonna, if half the money's gone on city decisions, we're gonna get the calls on where's this money going? Why did y'all make that decision? And I think if the board exists for that reason, I think we need to make those calls, whether that's meeting once a month and just going down and checking them and saying, yeah, that's good, or.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's why I called it out. And the other point of that is you could also just allocate a set amount of money to that level to where, you set $30,000 to projects under 10, or for those, and once that money's gone, then it has to come to the board. And like I said, I don't really know what to expect, and that's why we're here talking about it. I know that the reimbursement level, or the contributions are low, so I expect there to be decent interest in it. But most of these projects have been waiting for a long time. I'm not opposed to, having quarterly meetings and telling them you've got to wait till, that's
Like have a cycle.
that's definitely up to y'all. And, we cancel the meeting if there's nothing to talk about, or we just play it by ear based on because to be honest, here's what I really think is going to happen. I think you're going to get a whole bunch of applications, and we're going to be probably out of money with that first round. So we're going to come to y'all. We're going to have to call you for that round anyway. And then you're going to approve them, and then we're going to be done for the next year.
Yeah, that's why I think we need to have a vision with what to do with the money, because it's going to disappear quick.
So I would say just from my engagement with the businesses, with, citizens and people, the top problems that I'm getting called out are roofs and the asbestos component, and then also the fire safety issues. Those are probably the top three that I on a reoccurring basis here.
The money we have now is like 2.5 roofs, pretty much when it's said and done.
And that was something. So what if this does go through, my plan was to reach out to local roofing like Mesa and kind of talk with Miss Allie that's over there and just kind of explain what we're doing. And if it's a case where, hey, like we have 6 roofs that we can fund, or we have X number, can you give us a deal or work with us and try to find community partnerships elsewhere? Me and Deidre have reached out to Park Hill as well and talked with them to see if they could provide some kind of engineering things for a discounted price or pro bono. And so we're really trying to pull on our local partnerships to make sure that all the money goes as far as it can.
And right now, you do not have it a budget approved, so any project right now is coming back to you in some form because either we're approving a budget in a future meeting with the projects or however. So, and like I said, and it might actually not be meaningful at all to remove that because I don't know how many projects are going to be under 10 grand.
I honestly think the majority of the projects will be way over 10 grand.
Yeah, the roof repair is pretty much the only thing that would be under.
And I'm afraid that the roofs right now are so bad that none of them can be repaired.
I was going to say, I think most of them are full replacements.
Based on, getting it started on, I mean, we could even do it every other month. That's,
And we can reach out to the board, after this and schedule what that is. And like I said, because this still has to go in front of the council, we're still a little ways from implementing that anyway. So, I do think this board will start meeting somewhat more regularly. I mean, not once every 6 years like it has been, but I don't expect it to be super regularly. And really, I think, and it might be even, we can even, just from an administrative standpoint, do it where this grant opens only once a year during a set period, and we only consider projects during that period. And that's kind of what we've done with the chamber in our contract with the tourism fund, so that we make sure that we.
Like what you said, you're not like giving all the money and then you're like, oh, dang, there was a project we really could have done.
Because that was kind of what was happening with the tourism money. Was kind of first come, first serve. And so you spend it all, and then you had a really good problem. You're like, well, man, I would have rather funded that than that, but they got to it first. And this could easily be tweaked to say, that you have to apply during an application period once a year, and we work that into our budget process so that the projects are budgeted and funded for the next year. And I don't think that would be, with where we're starting now, I don't think that would be a big problem because, a lot of these businesses have been deferring these maintenance and repair for a long time. So, a few months wait, knowing that they're going to get some decent, substantial help, I think would be an easy trade-off. And I do think that way you do see what all the projects are, and when we prioritize them, you can see the scores and you can look at it as a totality and not the one project.
And I do have reporting, like the Texas Main Street program. I have to do quarterly reports, and that talks about all of what we're doing downtown. So, I can include a copy of those as well and send them out to you guys just so you kind of have context of like what else is going on versus the grant, you know what I mean?
And depending on the needs, I would say that this is not our catch-all, all for everything we want the tiers to do. This is just a new project. And so, it could be really easy to create a separate emergency repair project, guidelines for what that emergency is. And then when we budget every year, you budget a certain amount into the emergency stabilization fund or whatever line item you call it. So, there's lots of things. We're just finally kind of to the point to where we've got some money coming in that's enough to where we can start doing things. And I think we're going to have to start talking like that. Like what Nicole talked about internally, we've already had talks about a program for, second story residential conversions or activations. And I think we'll have a lot of different opportunities for that, different things when it comes to, so.
Okay. I really don't like, I'm sorry. I really don't like the idea of just one time a year, because if you are an entrepreneur and you have this great idea and it's in June, but we need to wait until February, by that time I might have moved on and want to do something different. I think we need to keep it open all year round. If my flower cooler, whatever goes out and it's $8,000 and I don't have that, I could apply and I know I could get it within 2-week time frame or a month, you know.
I don't think that would be, fixtures wouldn't be in it, like the equipment inside, right?
But like the flower cooler is not a good example, but like if our
No,
air conditioner went out, you know, the air conditioner might be a good example.
I agree.
But-
I agree because I feel like we're not going to even begin to start seeing stuff for almost a year. I don't agree. I don't like that either. But you know, I am just one person. But,
Well, and like I was just throwing out options. I mean, like I said, and the easy option for all of that is to leave it open, remove the $10,000 threshold, and bring every project in front of you. You know, that was
and I mean,
my job is to present.
But I also do agree too. I mean, with the $10,000 threshold, that does open up the ability, like you said, for small repairs. But also, you know, if you're thinking about it, the entire corridor, we could, you know, maybe that is something that staff could buy things for the greater good, like the bistro tables or signage or, you know, stuff that does benefit that entire corridor, but it's not thousands and thousands of dollars.
And I think that stuff would be in a separate line item when we budget outside of this grant project. And so like any ideas you have like that, you know, because now that, you know, we have not come together for a budget session because we haven't had really money to budget and money to do things. So I do think annually we have kind of that, we will start having that kind of budget session where we allocate what we want to do with those funds. And if you want infrastructure improvements, you know, if the city's buying things and doing things, that can be part of that line item. So I think what you'll end up getting is we'll get line items for the, you know, main downtown momentum grant, downtown infrastructure, house, you know, whatever our programs end up being, and y'all get to allocate. So we'll know what money we're getting in that year, and you can allocate between that. And so like right now, you know, we're not even really, like I said, we haven't budgeted money for this. So right now, you know, it's what are the terms of this going to be? And then at some point, once we get applications, we're going to have to sit down and talk about how much money we want to allocate to it anyway. So we're kind of not really talking about the money side of things. Right now, we're talking about the qualifications, the scoring, the approval thresholds, how much say you want, things like that. So, I mean, from the feedback and what I'm hearing is we want to do this, but we probably want to take the $10,000 limit out so that everything comes to the board, but we remain it open at all times.
Would y'all prefer to meet quarterly, monthly, every other month?
I would definitely say at least every other.
I would say every other month. And then we can adjust, you know, maybe
Yeah, please.
the next year or something if projects are faster or slower.
Are lunch normally good for everybody? Is there days of the week that are normally bad?
Wednesdays are all right.
Yeah, Wednesdays. You know, all right.
We'll probably keep sending out doodle polls just to make sure between weeks. But we'll look at a calendar. I'll try to get a recurring date out so that you can be used to it. And then that will, and if we do it like that, I think these will get shorter.
So, I mean, I don't know if anybody even wants to make a motion, but I'm just saying if we do we need to
Pending those
adjust
changes.
this motion?
Well, yeah, if you want to make the change, then I would just make that you approve, you know, if that's the way everybody's leading, the motion would be to approve that with the removal of the $10,000 staff approval threshold.
And there is a motion in that, if anybody wants. But, so I don't know if anybody have anything else they want to talk about? Because it'll all come before the Tiers Board anyway, so, so if no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the Main Street Momentum Grant Program with taking out the $10,000
Staff approval.
for staff approval. And I recommend forwarding the program to the Borger City Council for final approval.
Second.
And all in favor? And it passes. And Item 8, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Sorry.
Make that motion.
I second that motion.
I second that.
And all in favor? And we are adjourned.
All right, thanks so much for you guys' time.
Thank y'all so much. Thank you for all y'all have done, all of y'all.
If I could get, well, never mind, I have your email. I was gonna say, I'll add you
Chris.
to our